I'm Adriana, 34 years old. My family has always seen me as a disappointment compared to my perfect younger sister, Jessica. While they thought I was struggling, I was secretly building wealth living modestly to avoid their judgment. Then Jessica broke into my bank account, expecting to find evidence of my failure. Instead, she discovered I had $4 million. Now my family is demanding I help pay their debts after years of treating me like I was worthless. I feel so betrayed and conflicted about what to do next. Let me know where you're watching from. And hit that like and subscribe button if you want to find out how I handle this family betrayal. I grew up in a well-maintained upper-middle-class suburb of Chicago, where keeping up appearances meant everything. My parents, Thomas and Margaret Bennett, had very clear expectations about what success looked like. Good grades, prestigious colleges, respectable careers, and most importantly, making the family look good in front of others. For the first 7 years of my life, I was their only focus, but everything changed when Jessica was born. From the moment my sister arrived, it was obvious she was special. Jessica seemed to naturally embody everything my parents valued. She was beautiful, outgoing, naturally athletic, and seemed to absorb information effortlessly. While I struggled with reading and numbers, Jessica was reading chapter books by first grade and solving math problems meant for kids twice her age. The favoritism wasn't subtle. Our living room was like a shrine to Jessica, filled with her trophies, certificates, and professional photos from dance recitals and academic competitions. My achievements, when I managed to earn them, were briefly acknowledged and then forgotten, never displayed alongside my sister's collection of accolades. When I was in fourth grade, I won second place in a district-wide science fair. My parents attended only because Jessica had a ballet recital in the same building later that evening. They stayed for 20 minutes, took no pictures, and left early to get good seats for Jessica's performance. I remember standing alone with my project as other parents congratulated their children, feeling invisible in my own life. The pattern continued through our childhood. Jessica got private tutoring in subjects she already excelled at, while my parents dismissed my struggles as simply not trying hard enough. Christmas and birthdays highlighted the disparity even more. Jessica would receive thoughtful, expensive gifts that aligned with her interests, while I typically got generic items that showed little understanding of who I was. The most painful example was my 16th birthday. Jessica, who was only 9 at the time, received more attention than I did because she had won a regional spelling bee that morning. My birthday dinner turned into a celebration of her achievement with my parents, inviting extended family to toast Jessica rather than celebrate my milestone birthday. That same year, after years of struggling in school despite hours of studying, I was finally diagnosed with dyslexia. Instead of understanding, my parents seemed almost annoyed by the diagnosis. My father actually said, "Great, now she has an excuse for underachieving." My mother worried more about what the neighbors would think than about getting me the support I needed. Meanwhile, I had discovered something: I was genuinely good at computers and technology. I could visualize systems and identify problems in ways that came naturally to me. But my parents considered this a hobby at best and a waste of time at worst. When I tried showing my father a simple program I had written, he cut me off midway through my explanation and changed the subject to Jessica's college prospects, even though she was only 11 years old at the time. By the time Jessica was preparing for college, the contrast in our treatment couldn't have been more stark. My parents hired consultants, took her on tours of Ivy League schools, and prepared to spare no expense for her education. For me, they had reluctantly co-signed student loans for a state school and made it clear that financial assistance was limited. "We need to save for Jessica's education," they explained. "She has real potential." After struggling through 2 years of college, battling my learning disability with almost no support, I made the difficult decision to drop out. The looks of disappointment and resignation on my parents' faces confirmed what I had always suspected: they had expected me to fail all along. Jessica, of course, went on to attend a prestigious university entirely on my parents' dime, further cementing her golden child status. Family gatherings became exercises in endurance. "Jessica is on the dean's list again," my mother would announce proudly to anyone who would listen. Then inevitably, someone would turn to me with a pitying look and ask, "And what are you up to these days, Adriana?" My parents would quickly intercede with some vague comment about me still figuring things out or taking some time to find my path. Their embarrassment palpable. The constant comparisons and passive-aggressive comments became too much to bear. At 23, I made the decision to move across the country to Seattle. I needed physical distance from the toxic family dynamic that had shaped my entire life. My parents seemed almost relieved when I told them I was moving, as if my absence would make it easier for them to focus on Jessica's continuing success without the uncomfortable reminder of their disappointing older daughter. Jessica called my move running away from responsibility, while my parents framed it as another example of my inability to commit to anything. What none of them understood was that I wasn't running away. I was running toward the only chance I had to discover who I really was, away from their suffocating expectations and constant reminders of my perceived inadequacy. My life in Seattle began in a studio apartment so small I could touch both walls with my arms outstretched. It was all I could afford with the modest savings I had scraped together from part-time jobs during college. I found an entry-level position at a tech support call center, answering phones and helping customers troubleshoot basic computer problems. The pay was minimal, but it was enough to cover rent and ramen noodles, with a little left over to slowly build an emergency fund. The first few months were lonelier than I had anticipated. 3,000 miles from everyone I knew in a city famous for its social coldness, I found myself questioning my decision on particularly rainy nights when the only sound in my apartment was the tap of raindrops against my single window. Still, even the loneliness felt more peaceful than the constant criticism I had left behind. My life changed direction about 6 months into my time in Seattle, when I met Diane, a senior systems analyst who occasionally helped out in the call center during high-volume periods. She noticed something that no one in my family ever had: that I had a natural talent for identifying the root causes of software issues, seeing patterns that others missed. "You've got good instincts," she told me after watching me solve a particularly tricky customer problem. "Have you ever thought about learning to code?" When I explained about my dyslexia and how it had always made structured learning difficult, she didn't dismiss me or make excuses. Instead, she recommended specific online resources designed for visual learners and offered to answer questions whenever I got stuck. It was the first time someone had ever offered to help me work with my learning style, rather than expecting me to overcome it through sheer force of will. I began spending every free moment learning to code using free online resources while continuing to work full-time. The visual nature of programming clicked with my brain in ways traditional education never had. I could see the logic, visualize the flow of information. For the first time in my life, I found myself excelling at something academic, advancing rapidly through concepts that most beginners struggle with. By 25, while still working at the call center during the day, I had developed my first app, a simple tool that helps small business owners track inventory and generate reorder alerts. It wasn't revolutionary, but it solved a common problem in a clean, user-friendly way. I put it on the App Store with low expectations, pricing it at just $3.99. To my surprise, it started generating modest but steady revenue. The first month brought in just over $300. By the sixth month, as positive reviews accumulated and word of mouth spread, I was earning nearly $2,000 per month from the app passive income that exceeded what I made at my day job. Rather than spending this unexpected windfall, I reinvested it in improving my skills. I paid for advanced coding courses, attended local tech meetups, and upgraded my ancient laptop to something that could handle more sophisticated development tools. Each improvement in my skills led to enhancements in my app, which in turn generated more revenue, creating a positive feedback loop that slowly but steadily improved my financial situation. When my family called, which wasn't often, I kept things vague. "Work's going fine," I would say when they bothered to ask. They never probed further, seemingly content with their assumption that I was barely scraping by. On the rare occasions when I visited Chicago, I deliberately maintained the appearance of someone just getting by, driving a rental economy car, staying in my old room rather than a hotel, and dressing simply. It was easier than explaining my growing success to people who had never believed in me. The real breakthrough came when I was 28. I'd been working on a more ambitious project in my free time, specialized software for healthcare facilities that streamlined patient scheduling and automatically adjusted for staffing levels, appointment lengths, and provider specialties. It was born from a frustration I heard repeatedly from a nurse who lived in my apartment building: long wait times caused by inefficient scheduling systems. I spent 18 months developing it, testing it with input from medical professionals I met through networking events. When it was finally ready, I approached several healthcare software companies about purchasing the rights. After multiple rejections, a major healthcare technology provider saw its potential and purchased the software for $1.2 million. I remember staring at my bank account after the deposit cleared, unable to process that the number was real. I was a millionaire. Me, Adriana Bennett, the family disappointment, the dropout, the one with no real potential. My first instinct was to call my parents to finally prove my worth to them. But something held me back. Would they be happy for me, or would they find a way to diminish my achievement? Would they suddenly show interest in my life only because I had money? I decided to keep my success to myself a little longer, at least until I figured out what it meant for me and my relationship with my family. Instead of making dramatic life changes, I continued living relatively modestly. I moved to a slightly larger apartment in a safer neighborhood and bought a reliable used car, but otherwise maintained my low-profile lifestyle. I quit my day job and focused on establishing my own consulting company, specializing in healthcare technology solutions. Over the next 6 years, I leveraged my initial success into a thriving business. I hired a team of 4 talented developers, took on high-value projects for healthcare organizations, and made strategic investments in promising tech startups and carefully selected real estate properties. My net worth grew steadily, eventually reaching $4 million, a figure that still seems surreal to me. Throughout this period of growth, I maintained the fiction with my family that I was simply doing okay in Seattle with my small tech business. When Jessica graduated with honors and landed a prestigious position at a Chicago marketing firm, my parents called specifically to tell me about her starting salary, which they considered impressive. It was less than what I paid my mid-level developers, but I congratulated her sincerely. Looking back, I can recognize the complex reasons I kept my success secret. Part of it was fear of how my family would react, knowing they might try to take credit or advantage. Part was that I wanted to prove to myself that I could build something substantial and sustainable before revealing it to those who had doubted me. And part of it, I admit, was enjoying the freedom from expectations and demands that my perceived mediocrity provided. During my occasional visits home, I would sit through family dinners, where my parents and sister discussed their accomplishments and acquisitions in great detail, while asking me perfunctory questions they barely listened to the answers for. I became practiced at deflecting at being forgettably adequate in their eyes. It was a strange double-life successful entrepreneur in Seattle, perpetual disappointment in Chicago, but it was one I had carefully constructed and maintained for my own protection. Never did I imagine that my carefully maintained facade would come crashing down, not through my own revelation, but through an egregious invasion of privacy that would force me to confront the true nature of my family relationships once and for all. The trouble began with an unexpected text from Jessica 3 months ago. "Big sis, am coming to Seattle next week for a marketing conference. Would love to crash at your place and finally see this life you've built. Miss you." I stared at the message with suspicion. Jessica and I hadn't been close since childhood, and she had never shown interest in visiting me before. Our interactions were limited to obligatory holiday calls and occasionally being tagged in the same family photos on social media. Still, I wanted to believe this could be a genuine attempt to connect, to possibly build the sister relationship we had never really had. "Sure," I replied after some deliberation. "I can show you around the city." I gave her my address, describing it as nothing fancy but comfortable enough. In reality, it was a spacious 2-bedroom condo in a desirable neighborhood with views of Puget Sound, but I maintained the modest illusion I had created years ago. Jessica arrived on a Thursday evening, rolling an expensive designer suitcase into my living room and surveying my home with poorly disguised judgment. "It's cozy," she said in the tone people use when they mean the opposite. I ignored the subtle dig and showed her to the guest room. From the beginning, something felt off. Jessica asked unusually pointed questions about my business. How many clients did I have? What exactly did my company do? Was it profitable? How were my investments performing? Each time I gave vague, downplayed answers, attributing my caution to years of habit, rather than any specific suspicion about her motives. I spent the next day showing Jessica around Seattle. We visited the Space Needle Pike Place Market and took a ferry to Bainbridge Island. Throughout the day, her questions continued becoming more personal and financial in nature. She wanted to know if I had retirement savings, whether I owned or rented my condo, if I had student loan debt. I deflected as much as possible, growing increasingly uncomfortable with her focus on my financial situation. That evening, I made dinner at my place, casual but delicious salmon with local vegetables, a typical Seattle meal. We were halfway through when my phone rang with a call from an important client experiencing an emergency with their system. "I need to take this," I told Jessica, stepping into my home office and leaving my laptop open on the kitchen counter, my email visible but locked behind a password screen. The call took nearly 20 minutes as I talked the client through a complex system restart. When I returned to the kitchen, I immediately sensed something was wrong. My laptop was in exactly the same position, but Jessica's demeanor had changed. She seemed jittery, checking her own phone repeatedly and avoiding eye contact. "Everything okay?" I asked casually. "Fine, fine," she said too quickly. "Work stuff. You know how it is." We finished dinner with forced conversation, and Jessica announced she was tired and retreated to the guest room early. Something about her behavior bothered me enough that after she left, I checked my laptop. The screen was still on my email login page, but a notification banner had appeared at the top. "Last login attempt 12 minutes ago." A chill ran through me. I hadn't logged out completely before taking the call, and my banking app, which I had been checking earlier, would still have been accessible. I quickly opened my browser history and confirmed my suspicion. Someone had accessed my banking website while I was on the phone. I barely slept that night, torn between confronting Jessica immediately and waiting to gather more information about what she was up to. By morning, I had decided to play along and see what happened next. Jessica was all smiles at breakfast, suggesting we visit some shops downtown. Throughout the morning, she kept checking her phone, clearly texting someone extensively. When I casually asked if everything was okay with work, she gave a startled look before composing herself. "Just keeping Mom and Dad updated on my trip," she said with an unconvincing smile. That afternoon, I deliberately set a trap. I made an excuse to take a shower, leaving my phone on the coffee table, with notifications enabled but the screen locked. I had installed a security app that would take a photo using the front camera whenever someone entered an incorrect passcode. Sure enough, when I checked later, there were 3 photos of Jessica's frustrated face as she tried unsuccessfully to access my phone. I could no longer contain my anger. That evening, after returning from a tense dinner where Jessica had suddenly become very interested in my future plans, I confronted her in my living room. "Why did you try to access my bank account yesterday?" I asked directly, my voice steady despite my rage. Jessica's face went through a series of expressions: shock, guilt, defiance, and finally a poor attempt at innocence. "What are you talking about? I wouldn't do that." "Don't lie to me," I said, showing her the login notification and the photos of her attempting to access my phone. "What are you really doing here, Jessica? Because this isn't a sister bonding trip." After several more denials, Jessica finally broke. "Fine, Mom and Dad sent me here to check on you. They're worried about you." "Worried?" I repeated incredulously. "They've barely asked how I'm doing in years." Jessica shifted uncomfortably. "They think you're in trouble financially, that your business is failing. They wanted me to assess the situation before they stage an intervention." The truth hit me like a physical blow. "An intervention for what?" "For your failure to launch," Jessica said, as if reciting something she had heard many times. "Dad thinks you're probably in debt. Mom thinks you might be too proud to ask for help. They sent me to get evidence of how bad things are, so they could confront you with it at Thanksgiving and offer to let you move back home to regroup." I stared at her, speechless with hurt and anger. "So you broke into my bank account?" "I didn't break in," she defended weakly. "It was already open. I just looked." "And what did you find, Jessica?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Her expression changed to something like resentment mixed with awe. $4 million, she whispered. "How is that even possible? You've been letting everyone think you're barely getting by when all this time, I've been building a successful business by myself with no support or encouragement from any of you," I finished for her. "The family that always thought I would amount to nothing." Jessica's attitude shifted instantly in a way that made my skin crawl. "But this is amazing news. Do you know what this means for the family?" "What it means for the family," I repeated, not liking where this was heading. "Mom and Dad have been having money troubles," she confessed, suddenly all sisterly concern. "Dad's business investment didn't work out, and the house needs a new roof, and my student loans are crushing me. We thought we'd have to sell the family home, but now—" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Now you think I'll bail everyone out after finding out you violated my privacy, after years of being treated like the family disappointment?" "Don't be dramatic," Jessica said dismissively. "We're family. Family helps family." "I think you should leave," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Your conference doesn't really exist, does it?" Jessica had the grace to look embarrassed. "I needed a cover story." "Pack your things," I said. You can get a hotel for tonight. I'll pay for it. But I want you out of my home now. You're overreacting, Jessica protested. I was trying to help you. No, I corrected her. You were spying on me for Mom and Dad. You invaded my privacy. You betrayed my trust. What about your lies? She countered, pretending to be struggling when you're loaded. I never lied, I said. I just didn't volunteer information to people who never showed interest in my success. There's a difference. Jessica left that night, slamming the door behind her. Before she even reached the airport the next morning, my phone was already blowing up with messages from my parents and extended family. The invasion was just beginning, and I knew the fallout would be even worse than I anticipated. The morning after Jessica left, I woke up to 23 text messages, 14 missed calls, and 9 voicemails. It was as if someone had kicked a hornet's nest and the swarm was heading straight for me. My parents led the charge, their messages oscillating between guilt trips and outright demands. My father's first voicemail set the tone. Adriana, this is your father, he began, as if I wouldn't recognize the voice that had expressed disappointment in me throughout my childhood. Jessica told us everything. How dare you keep this from us? After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by hoarding money while your family struggles. Call me back immediately. We need to discuss your responsibilities. My mother's approach was more emotionally manipulative, her voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. Sweetheart, we're so hurt that you didn't share your success with us. We've always believed in you, always supported your dreams. To find out like this from Jessica, it feels like you don't consider us part of your life anymore. We're your parents. We deserve better than this. Please call as soon as you can. We need to talk about how we move forward as a family. Jessica had sent a simple text. Way to overreact. Now everyone's upset. Hope you're happy. This was followed by a passive-aggressive social media post visible to all our mutual connections. Sad when success changes people and makes them forget where they came from and who was there for them from the beginning. Family first, unless you're rich. The most surprising messages came from extended family members' relatives who had barely acknowledged my existence at family gatherings for years. Suddenly, cousins I hadn't spoken to since high school were just checking in and hoping to reconnect. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, who had once loudly wondered if my learning disability might actually be just laziness, now wanted to grab lunch next time you're in Chicago to discuss her son's exciting new business opportunity that just needs some startup capital. As I scrolled through message after message, a clearer picture of my family's financial situation emerged. It was significantly worse than Jessica had implied. My parents had refinanced their house during the real estate bubble, taking out substantial equity to fund home renovations and Jessica's education. When property values dropped, they found themselves underwater on the mortgage, owing more than the house was worth. My father, always overconfident in his business acumen, had invested heavily in a friend's restaurant venture that had gone bankrupt within a year, taking a significant portion of my parents' retirement savings with it. Jessica, despite her prestigious degrees and marketing position, had accumulated over $200,000 in student loan debt. She had also developed expensive tastes during college, evident in her designer wardrobe and luxury apartment that her salary couldn't realistically support. My mother, meanwhile, had been hiding significant credit card debt from my father, the result of years of compulsive shopping and keeping up appearances in their social circle. After 3 days of relentless messages, I finally agreed to a family video call, hoping to address the situation directly and then set some boundaries. It was a mistake. The moment the video connected, I could see my parents and Jessica sitting stiffly in the living room of my childhood home, presenting a united front. My father wasted no time getting to the point. "We've calculated what we need to get back on solid financial ground," he announced without even a greeting. The mortgage situation requires $175,000 to bring it current and refinance at a reasonable rate. Jessica's student loans are at $212,000. Your mother's unexpected expenses come to around $86,000. My investment loss was $325,000. Plus, we need a new roof and some other house repairs. Call it an even $850,000 total. I stared at the screen in disbelief. You're presenting me with a bill, no congratulations on your success, no we're proud of what you've accomplished, just a demand for nearly $1 million. Don't be dramatic, Adriana, my mother sighed. Of course we're proud. Your father has been telling everyone how he encouraged your interest in computers from the beginning. This was news to me. Dad did what? My father cleared his throat. Well, naturally, I've supported your business endeavors. I was the one who taught you the value of hard work. You told me computers were a waste of time, I reminded him. You dismissed my interest in technology at every opportunity. That's not how I remember it, he said dismissively. Regardless, we have more pressing matters to discuss. Your family needs your help, Adriana. That should be your priority right now. Jessica, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, jumped in. It's not like we're asking for all your money. You'd still have plenty left. And think about how much Mom and Dad spent raising you. This is just paying them back, really. Paying them back, I repeated. For what exactly? For telling me I was a disappointment, for making me feel like I was worth less than you my entire life, for refusing to support me when I was diagnosed with dyslexia, for making me take out student loans while paying for your entire education. That's unfair, my mother protested. We've always treated you and Jessica exactly the same. The blatant rewriting of history was too much. That's absolutely false, and you know it. But let's set that aside for a moment. Jessica broke into my private financial information. She invaded my privacy in my own home after I welcomed her as a guest. None of you has acknowledged that or apologized for it. It was an open computer, Jessica said defensively. Besides, if you hadn't been hiding things from us, I wouldn't have needed to look. That's victim blaming, I shot back. You came to my home under false pretenses with the explicit purpose of spying on me. My father waved his hand impatiently. Let's not get bogged down in who did what. The point is, we're family, and family takes care of each other. You have the means to help us, and we expect you to do so. Expect? The word hung in the air. You expect me to hand over nearly $1 million just like that, after years of treating me like I was nothing. We never treated you like you were nothing, my mother insisted, tears forming in her eyes. We always loved you. We just worried about you because things seemed to come harder to you than they did to Jessica. So you responded by making things even harder for me, I pointed out. That makes no sense. Look, my father cut in, his patience visibly wearing thin. We can debate ancient history all day, but it doesn't change the facts. You have money. We need money. You're my daughter, and I'm telling you what the family needs from you right now. The authoritarian tone, so familiar from my childhood, triggered something in me. I'm going to end this call, I said quietly. I need time to think about all of this, but I want to be very clear about something. My financial success was achieved entirely without your help or encouragement. I don't owe you this money. If I decide to help at all, it will be on my terms, not because you're demanding it. Adriana, my father started, his face reddening. I'm not finished. I interrupted something I had never dared do growing up. What Jessica did was a serious violation of trust. The fact that none of you has acknowledged that or apologized speaks volumes about how little you respect my boundaries. I need space from all of you right now. I ended the call before they could respond, my hands shaking as I closed my laptop. The weight of decades of complicated family dynamics crashed down on me all at once, and I found myself crying for the first time in years, deep, painful sobs for the supportive family I had never had, and for the young girl who had spent her whole life trying to prove her worth to people who couldn't see it. The emotional aftermath of the family confrontation hit me harder than I had anticipated. For the first time in my career, I found myself unable to focus on work. I called my small team together and explained that I needed to take some emergency personal leave. They were understanding and capable of handling our current projects without me, another benefit of having built a business on my own terms. The next few days became a blur of long walks through Seattle neighborhoods, regardless of the persistent drizzle that matched my mood. I wandered for hours along the waterfront through Pike Place Market and into coffee shops where I would stare into cups of cooling coffee, replaying family conversations from both recent days and distant memories. On my third day of wandering, I found myself sitting on a bench at Cary Park, looking out at the Seattle skyline, with the iconic Space Needle standing proud against the gray sky. A memory surfaced of my 10th birthday, when I had asked for a small telescope. My parents had given me a jewelry box instead, telling me it was more appropriate for a young lady. Jessica had received a telescope for her 8th birthday 2 years later, despite never expressing interest in astronomy. These small rejections had accumulated over the years, each one reinforcing the message that my interests, my struggles, and ultimately my identity were somehow less valid, less worthy of support than my sisters. The realization brought fresh tears, which mingled with the light rain on my face. I had been seeing Dr. Lena, a therapist, on and off for the past few years to work through my complicated family dynamics. I called her office and scheduled an emergency session for the following day. When I sat down in her familiar office, the words poured out of me like water through a broken dam. I built my entire success partly to prove them wrong, I admitted after recounting the recent events. $4 million of spite. Dr. Lena's expression remained thoughtful. Do you really believe that's the only reason you worked so hard, that external validation was your sole motivation? The question gave me pause. No, I said slowly. I loved the work itself. I loved solving problems, creating solutions that actually help people. The healthcare scheduling system I developed has reduced wait times for thousands of patients. So perhaps proving your family wrong was part of your drive, but not the complete picture, she suggested. The question now is, why did you keep your success a secret for so long? What were you protecting by maintaining that facade? I had asked myself the same question many times over the past week. I think I was afraid they would take credit for my success. And I was right, they're already rewriting history to make it seem like they supported me all along. What else? She prompted. I was afraid they would only value me for my money, not for who I am. My voice broke. And I was right about that too. Dr. Lena nodded. So now that your fears have been confirmed, how does that change your relationship with your family going forward? It was the central question I had been avoiding. What did I want my relationship with my family to be now that the truth was out? After my therapy session, I met with Diane, my original mentor, who had become a close friend over the years. We sat at our favorite waterfront restaurant as I recounted the family drama. Unlike my family, Diane had believed in me from the beginning, had seen my potential when no one else had. I've never told you this, Diane said after listening intently, but I haven't spoken to my own brother in nearly 15 years. I looked at her with surprise. In all our years of friendship, she had rarely mentioned her family. He betrayed my trust in a business deal, she continued, took credit for my work, then demanded financial support when the company took off. I had to make the painful decision to cut him out of my life. Do you regret it? I asked. She considered the question carefully. I regret that he forced me to make that choice. I regret that he wasn't the person I needed him to be. But I don't regret choosing my own well-being over a toxic relationship. Family should lift you up, not tear you down. Sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. Her words resonated deeply. Over the next few days, I spent time with my closest friends in Seattle. Rachel and Michael, a couple I had met through a tech meetup years ago, invited me over for dinner and listened as I processed my feelings. I keep thinking about all the times I diminished my achievements when talking to my family. I told them. I would downplay promotions, hide awards, change the subject when things were going well. I've been doing it for so long it became automatic. Because you knew deep down they couldn't celebrate your success, Michael suggested. Their narrative about you couldn't accommodate your achievements. Rachel, always more direct, added, they're showing you who they really are right now, Adriana. They had a chance to apologize for invading your privacy and to genuinely celebrate what you've built. Instead, they're treating you like an ATM. Believe what they're showing you. The painful clarity of her words struck me. My family was indeed showing me their true priorities, and I needed to believe what I was seeing, not what I wished I could see. I began keeping a journal documenting my thoughts and memories as they surfaced. Writing about my childhood experiences from an adult perspective was illuminating and cathartic. I could now recognize patterns of emotional manipulation and favoritism that had shaped my self-perception. My success hadn't happened despite my family's treatment. It had in some ways been forged by it. I had developed resilience, self-reliance, and determination precisely because I couldn't depend on my family for support. The breakthrough moment came during a solitary hike in the Cascade Mountains. Standing on a ridge overlooking a vast expanse of forest and sky, I had a sudden, liberating realization. My worth had never been dependent on my family's approval or recognition. It had always been within me, waiting to be discovered on my own terms. I had spent years seeking validation from people who were constitutionally incapable of providing it. No amount of money, success, or achievement would change that fundamental reality. The only validation that mattered now was my own. As I descended from the mountain that afternoon, I felt lighter, as if I had left something heavy behind on the ridge. I couldn't change my family, but I could change how I responded to them. I could set boundaries that protected my well being. I could define success on my own terms. The grief was still there, the grief for the supportive family I had never had, but would always wish for. But alongside it was something new, a determination to live authentically, without hiding my achievements or diminishing my worth to make others comfortable. The little girl who had been told she wasn't enough was finally ready to stand tall in her success with or without her family's approval. After 2 weeks of intense emotional processing, I was ready to take control of the situation. My first step was to craft a detailed email to send to my entire family. I spent days working on it, writing and rewriting to ensure it conveyed exactly what I wanted to say, without the heat of anger or the sting of fresh hurt. The final version began, "To my family, I've taken time to reflect on recent events and our family history, and I'm ready to address the situation clearly and directly. My success in business has come entirely from my own efforts, perseverance, and talents, often despite rather than because of family support. For years, I've downplayed my achievements when communicating with you all, partly because my accomplishments were rarely met with genuine celebration, and partly because I wanted to be valued for who I am, not what I could provide financially. Jessica's decision to access my financial information without permission was a serious violation of trust and privacy. It revealed not only a lack of respect for my boundaries, but also the true nature of how I'm viewed by my family. The immediate pivot from years of dismissing my capabilities to demands for financial assistance speaks volumes about the conditional nature of your interest in my life. I want to be clear about my position going forward. I outlined specific terms for any future relationship. Respect for my boundaries would be non-negotiable. Acknowledgement of past patterns would be necessary for healing, and financial expectations would need to be removed from our interactions completely. I explained that I would be taking space from all of them to process this betrayal of trust, and that any future financial decisions would be made according to my own judgment, not their demands. I concluded by saying that I still cared for them despite everything, but that care had to include self-respect and healthy boundaries. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Next, I scheduled appointments with my financial advisor and attorney. While I had no intention of being manipulated into giving my family the large sum they demanded, I wanted to understand my options. My financial advisor helped me assess what level of assistance, if any, I might comfortably provide without compromising my business operations or personal financial security. My attorney advised me on protecting my assets, including updating my will and establishing clearer separation between personal and business finances. She also suggested documenting the unauthorized access to my accounts, just in case the situation escalated in unexpected ways. I implemented immediate security measures, changing all my passwords, enabling two-factor authentication on every account, and reviewing my credit reports to ensure nothing else had been compromised. I felt ridiculous taking these precautions against my own family, but recent events had shown me that my trust had been misplaced. With my professional protections in place, I began addressing individual family members according to their specific roles in the situation. To my parents, I sent a brief follow-up message. "I need space and time to process everything that's happened. I won't be in contact for at least 30 days. Please respect this boundary. If and when I'm ready to discuss financial matters, it will be on my terms, not in response to demands." To Jessica, I wrote, "What you did violated my privacy and betrayed my trust. Those aren't things that can be fixed with a casual apology or dismissive explanation. Trust is rebuilt slowly through consistent actions over time. Ball's in your court on whether you want to try." To the extended family members who had suddenly expressed interest in reconnecting, I sent polite but firm responses, making it clear that I wouldn't be discussing financial matters or investment opportunities with them. The one exception was my teenage cousin Sam, Jessica's younger brother, who was 16 and had always been kind to me at family gatherings. Unlike the others, he had sent a simple message: "I think what happened to you sucks. I'm sorry people are being weird about money. Hope you're okay." I decided to establish a small trust fund for his future education, managed by my financial advisor, with strict controls to prevent parental interference. He deserved support for his genuine concern, and I wanted him to have options I never had. The responses to my boundaries were predictably mixed. My parents reacted with anger and indignation, sending lengthy emails about ingratitude and family obligation. Jessica oscillated between defensive justifications and half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. Some extended family members apologized sincerely for their opportunistic approaches, while others doubled down with guilt trips about family first. I read each response once, then filed them away without replying. For the first time in my life, I wasn't allowing myself to be drawn into the familiar cycle of defending, explaining, and ultimately capitulating to avoid conflict. I had said what I needed to say, and now I was giving myself the gift of space. The decision to temporarily block my immediate family's phone numbers and social media accounts was difficult but necessary. Each message had been triggering fresh waves of hurt and anger, preventing me from moving forward. The silence that followed was initially unnerving, then increasingly peaceful. As weeks passed, I felt a weight lifting. I no longer needed to hide my success or diminish my achievements. I began updating my company website with photos and a more accurate biography. I accepted an interview with the Seattle Business Journal about women in technology, speaking openly about my journey. I even posted photos of my actual life on social media, without the careful editing I had previously done to maintain the illusion of modest living. The most liberating change was internal. I stopped carrying the burden of my family's approval. Their validation, which I had sought for so long, no longer determined my sense of worth. I had built something valuable entirely on my own terms, helping healthcare providers serve patients more efficiently, and building a team that shared my vision. That was something to be proud of, regardless of whether my family ever truly recognized it. As I reclaimed my narrative and stopped hiding my success, I found myself thinking about how I wanted to use my wealth going forward. Beyond securing my own future, I began researching organizations that supported children with learning disabilities, particularly those from families without resources for proper interventions. The young girl I had been struggling to read while being told she wasn't trying hard enough deserved better. Perhaps I could help ensure other children in similar situations received the support I never had. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but for the first time I was charting it entirely for myself, without the shadow of family expectations clouding my vision. Whatever came next would be on my terms, not theirs. 6 months have passed since the confrontation that changed everything. The seasons have shifted from Seattle's rainy spring to a gloriously sunny summer, and now into the golden hues of early fall. My life has transformed along with the weather opening up in ways I never anticipated. After years of living below my means in housing that didn't reflect my success, I finally purchased a home that feels right. A modern 3-bedroom house overlooking Lake Washington. It's not ostentatious by wealthy standards, but it's beautiful, comfortable, and most importantly, it's a space I've created entirely for myself, without concern for anyone else's judgment or expectations. My business continues to thrive. We've expanded to a team of 11, taking on more ambitious healthcare technology projects that genuinely improve patient experiences. The work remains fulfilling, but I've also learned to create better boundaries between my professional and personal life, no longer feeling the need to prove my worth through constant productivity. The most meaningful development has been the launch of the Reclaim Foundation, focused on supporting young people with learning disabilities. We provide diagnostic services, educational technology, and advocacy training, particularly for students from families without resources for private interventions. Each time we help a child get proper support for dyslexia or other learning differences, I feel a piece of my own childhood healing. My relationship with my family has evolved in unexpected ways. After 3 months of silence, I received an email from Jessica that was different from her previous messages. There were no demands, no dismissals of my feelings, no attempt to minimize what had happened. Instead, she wrote, "I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything. I'm not going to make excuses for what I did. It was wrong, and I'm truly sorry. Not just for looking at your bank account, but for my role in the family dynamic that hurt you for so many years. I didn't see it then, but being the golden child wasn't actually good for me either. It created pressure and expectations that shaped me in ways I'm just beginning to understand. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm working with a therapist to understand why I did what I did and why I thought it was okay." I didn't respond immediately, wary of being pulled back into old patterns. After a week of consideration, I agreed to meet for coffee at a neutral location during my next trip to Chicago. The conversation was awkward at first, both of us carefully choosing our words. But as we talked, I sensed a genuine shift in Jessica. She had begun questioning the family narratives that had defined both our roles, recognizing how our parents had pitted us against each other in subtle and not so subtle ways. They're still in denial, she told me, referring to our parents. Dad refuses to acknowledge any favoritism, and Mom just cries whenever I bring up how they treated you. But I see it now. I've been looking through old photo albums and it's so obvious. Every picture tells the story, your achievements pushed to the side, mine centered and celebrated. We've begun building a different kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect, rather than the competition and resentment that characterized our childhood interactions. It's tentative and sometimes uncomfortable, but it feels authentic in a way our previous interactions never did. My parents remain a more complicated situation. After my extended silence, they attempted a variety of approaches to reestablish contact, from angry accusations to tearful pleas to acting as if nothing had happened. My father sent business articles about family wealth management, with highlighted passages about obligations to provide for parents in retirement. My mother left voicemails reminiscing about how she had always believed in me and just wanted me to be happy. When I finally agreed to a brief phone call, it became clear that neither had done the reflection necessary for real change. They acknowledged the privacy violation only as a misunderstanding and continued to insist they had always treated Jessica and me equally. When I calmly pointed out specific instances of favoritism, my father accused me of dwelling on the past, while my mother claimed I was always too sensitive. Most tellingly, they returned quickly to the subject of financial assistance, framing it as an opportunity for me to be generous, rather than their entitlement. I ended the call by reiterating my boundaries. Any financial decisions would be mine alone, made without pressure or manipulation. I've maintained minimal contact with them since then, exchanging occasional texts but declining invitations for extended visits. I've made peace with the probability that they may never be capable of the self-awareness necessary for genuine reconciliation. The parents I wished for, who would celebrate my success on its own terms and take responsibility for past hurts, may never exist. That realization brings grief, but also freedom from futile expectations. My personal life has expanded in beautiful ways. I've begun dating Jamie, a pediatric occupational therapist I met through my foundation work. Unlike previous relationships where I downplayed my success to avoid intimidating partners, I've been open about my business and financial situation from the beginning. Jamie appreciates my achievements without being defined by them, and understands the complex family dynamics I'm navigating, having worked with many children from challenging home situations. The freedom of living honestly without hiding aspects of my success or diminishing my struggles has been revelatory. I no longer carry the exhausting burden of maintaining two separate personas: the successful entrepreneur in Seattle and the underachieving daughter in Chicago. I am simply Adriana in all my complexity to everyone in my life. This journey has taught me profound lessons about wealth and relationships. Money doesn't create character flaws, it reveals them. My family's reaction to my financial success didn't create their conditional approach to love and support, it merely exposed patterns that had always existed beneath the surface. No amount of money could buy the genuine family connection I had longed for throughout my life. That kind of authentic relationship can only be built on mutual respect, empathy, and honesty, qualities that financial transactions can never replace. I've also learned that some relationships may never be healthy or fulfilling, regardless of how much I might wish otherwise. This doesn't mean giving up entirely, but it does mean adjusting expectations and setting firm boundaries that protect my well-being. The young girl who desperately sought validation from people incapable of providing it has grown into a woman who understands that her value was never dependent on their recognition. My wealth now feels less like a secret to protect or a resource to defend, and more like a tool to create the life and impact I want. I'm focusing on building authentic connections, supporting causes I believe in, and creating space for joy and discovery. The approval I sought for so long from my family has been replaced by something more valuable: self-acceptance, and the freedom to define success on my own terms. Whether or not my family ever fully understands or accepts my journey, I found peace in knowing that I am enough exactly as I am. My worth was never determined by their perception, and my future isn't limited by their expectations. That realization is the truest form of wealth I could ever possess. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who only seemed interested in what you could do for them? I'd love to hear how you handled similar situations in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength through difficult family dynamics. Thank you so much for listening, And remember that sometimes the most important family is the one we create for ourselves. Your worth is never dependent on others' recognition.